What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I am Alex, and I'm joined by a good friend of the channel, Degenerate Jay, and we're here to kind of look at the more negative side of the year. Now, you know me, I do talk a lot of positivity on games, but you know what? We got to be critical every now and then, and what I wanted to kind of do, to not just make it, like, overtly negative, this is going to be a list of games that either didn't reach expectations, right? Like, we thought it could have been better, or, yes, I mean, there are some just bad video games on this list, and I thought, you know what? Jay would be a perfect guest. Not saying Jay's all negative, but just to bring him in and see what he thinks about these games. So I want to welcome Jay in. All his links are in the description if you guys want to check out the channel, his channels, all of them. Fantastic guy, fantastic creator. Jay, are you ready to kind of go through the more negative side of the year?
Captain Negativity is here. I've brought my naughty list. I've checked it twice and we're no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing, dude. I'm ready to talk about them, but something you mentioned before, I think overall this year has been a pretty good year for new games. I think you play more new game releases than I do. I
Yeah.
often am like in the past playing like older stuff. Like right now I'm playing through AC Revelations, but I think that like just because we're looking at the bad doesn't mean it was a bad year.
Right. Yep, I'll have plenty of good videos at the end. I mean, these are all good, but there'll be more positive videos towards the end of the year of some of the better games I've played. All right, maybe we'll just do, you know what? Let's just kind of throw them all out, and then we can kind of go one by one and talk about kind of the impact that it left us. So we got Foam Stars, Suicide Squad, Skull and Bones, Funko Fusion, Concord, X Defiant, and South Park Snow Day. Now, some of these actually both, I think we can actually say it for both of us. Some of them we did play, some of them we didn't play. Some I played and Jay didn't, some vice versa, and I think some both of us didn't play, like a game like Foam Stars. So, well, Jay, I think maybe like a Foam Stars is a good place to start. Neither of us played it, right? So more of like a rapid fire thing. I mean, my quick thoughts are simply I wanted to put it on this list. Actually, you said it, right? You said, did the game even come out this year? The game is just ending, right? I think to me, it was never, I never thought of it as like a terrible, terrible thing. I mean, yeah, it was a ripoff of Splatoon, or at least it seemed that way. But I never got invested to know if the game was good or bad. But I do think if a game came out this past February, and it's basically being shut down by this February, let's say, this upcoming one, when a game that's supposed to come out, supposed to last, you imagine, live service games are supposed to last multiple years. And when they go away after 1 year, I would call that, a failure, right? And that's another kind of maybe aspect of this list, too. These games didn't do what they were supposed to do, right? So I think Foam Stars is a good example of that.
Yeah, I think something to look at too with this is that this year and the last few years have been a year of kind of the video game communities and like the people who actually play games kind of putting their foot down on things where it's like, hey, there's 20 of this type of game. Not we've seen this already, but like there's already a niche filled here. It's not that you can't have competition, but when you have competition, it has to do something new and unique. While I didn't like play Foam Stars, so I don't want to sound like an expert or like I think I am, I did watch gameplay of Foam Stars. I thought it was charming. Like I thought it was kind of neat. It was very clearly just the PlayStation-esque, or like I should say the Square Enix-esque answer to Splatoon. I always think of PlayStation when I think of Square Enix, but I know Square Enix is trying to move away from that idea. But it's kind of like that Square answer to it. The thing is, though, it's like some of the characters are charming. Like I think some of the character designs are cute. Some of the integrations are fun. But like you're on season 10, it's already basically counting down to ending your game. I guess I'm surprised that they're giving up so quickly. But like it's not a shock, especially from Square Enix, where they have been critical of their own successes. Even something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, reportedly behind the scenes, there have been, murmurs that kind of like back when they were doing Tomb Raider stuff and things like that, that it didn't hit their sales expectations. So Square is kind of lofty with all of their expectations. But again, you look at like even the most recent trailer, it came out 8 hours ago from the Square Enix YouTube channel, and it has 2,200 views. So like there's just not interest in this game. I think this has been a year of gamers kind of being like, hey, this game already exists. It's called Splatoon, or even with one later on, Concord. hey, I already got like 50 games like this out there. I don't need this, and just kind of moving on from this kind of game.
I kind of completely echo that. Like this with Foam Stars, with maybe even like a Suicide Squad, which we'll get to in just a second. Like this was kind of a year of if it felt dull and like we could kind of sense that people just didn't really put up with it, or if they're like you said, even if the game's not bad, but there are other games in the genre, it's like nope, it's already filled. Like the genre's full. We don't really need an extra game here. We're just not going to play it, and that really kind of was a theme of the whole thing. All right, well, Suicide Squad was next in terms of the order I listed them off. So I mean I think both of us on both our channels have talked so much about this. Look, I don't think this is the worst game ever created. I'm not a fan of what they did with certain characters. I've said that before. The gameplay, it's fine. It's fine in short bursts. It's not amazing. I don't know. Like this whole game, the game wasn't good. I would say that. I don't think it's a terrible game, but I would not say it was. I think my title of my review is I played it. I did not like it. Like I think it was just flat out. I did not like this game. And I do think based off of like after it came out and what happened behind the scenes and all that, I don't think you can call this a success. So I would argue both from critical reception and just players playing it and players playing it after the game came out, I don't really think any part of this game could be, looked at to say was a success.
No, I think that this game was also, it was met with a lot of resistance for several reasons. First off, this was the first in the Batman Arkham universe game that had been made in a very long time. People thought that universe was over. And unfortunately, games like this also did cast a negative stigma on other games. Like, for example, I've been playing Batman Arkham Shadow on the MetaQuest, a game that I think is honestly very good, but held back slightly by the tech of the MetaQuest. But that said, that game I think has gotten like negative, reception around it, partially because this game made people so mad. So it's like Suicide Squad was a game that I think really pissed people off for several reasons. You had the story direction, you had some, I would say, preachy elements in there too, but overall, just the story was badly written. The post-launch content that was supposed to save the game and tie it all together, it's honestly been pretty pathetic. There are people that you can tell care around this game. That's one thing I will say. Like the environmental designers, that's something I praised. Metropolis is beautiful. There's so many Easter eggs, different little things like that. You go in the Batcave, they put detail in there. The people doing the facial animations and the actual mocap, like things like that on the technical side, I can tell people cared. But there was so many murmurings of like bad things going on behind the scenes with the studio heads and the direction being pulled in 10 different ways and everything, that like this game is just, it's a mess. It's an okay mess, like if you were to cut the story out, but it doesn't do anything. Again, like I think at the end of the day, one of the reasons this fails is that even if you wanted to ramrod this in the Arkham continuity, there would be people willing to accept it if it was like Destiny, where like it was able to do some of the better things of the looter shooter genre that do feel addictive and get people really playing your game and grinding it over and over again. If they were able to do that, I think you'd still have outcry around the game, but you would have a community that supported the game. I think the fact that, we're now looking at the game and no one talks about it, no one cares, it's just irrelevant. It goes to show you that like they didn't do the best parts of that genre. And again, I think at the end of the day, it's like Foam Stars. It's like there's 100 games like this. We don't need this. And, I do want to clarify one thing. I think that can be a bad thing, that attitude. It can lead to no competition. It's one reason why Smash Bros. Barely ever gets any competition, because everybody just says, well, we have Smash Bros. But, competition is good. If you can make a good game in that genre, like really good, it excels, it exceeds, and it competes, and it does something new and interesting, that's always great, because it pushes the other games that are like it to do better. Like if Foam Stars had come out, it was the greatest game ever, or this did, it was the greatest game ever, that could elevate that genre. But we're not actually seeing that. We're seeing okay to bad games that gamers are just saying like, well, there's 20 good games just like this. Why should I play yours?
I think even piggybacking off that, it's like, if you're going to compete, I mean, these are mimics, right? Like they're trying to be other things, and they do a worse version of them. And that's generally what you get when you try to like enter the arena of a new thing. The games that stand out, they try to be part of something, but then they do something that's kind of revolutionary for that genre, right? And it tends to be the failures, the ones that you see that just don't land or don't work, whether it's at launch or long term. They tend to just try to be, they're just trying to copy what's already been done, and then they do a worse job. So of course they're not going to actually land on it. All right, so with that being said, actually, that's I think a pretty good segue. While this game is maybe slightly unique, the first quadruple A game I believe of all time, correct me if I'm wrong, we got Skull and Bones as the next one out there. Now look, I want to say something maybe a little unique for Skull and Bones. So they gave it to me, I played it, and I didn't play it too much. I actually gave codes out as well, and what I was told by people is that the more you play it, the game actually legitimately gets good. I've been told that by multiple, just like random people online that say that, and I believe them. I think I got enough people that told me that. With that being said, didn't get me. I just feel because of the budget, because of how big the game was supposed to be, if you're going quality, I just don't think it was good enough. I think you take in my opinion, the best part of Black Flag, and I guess you dumb it down. Like you just don't have. It's not even, in my opinion, as good as the Black Flag, ship combat. Now, again, I didn't play it maybe long enough to experience like the true genius of it. But for me, the quality not so high, not terrible, but just not really there. $70. This is a full price thing. This is also a game that they wanted to last multi-year, right? This is a live service built into just a multiplayer type game. So I don't know, and I just feel, I guess, the long-term effects of this game, people, like you said with Suicide Squad, like people aren't really talking about it. It's not really a thing. When you bring up Skull and Bones to at least the internet, right? The people on the internet, when you bring it up, you legitimately get the joke of the quadruple A thing. That's all you get is that it's the first quadruple A game that's ever been created, or that it's gonna blow the ceiling off of everything. You don't get anything about like the actual game itself, which I think tells you about what it managed to land on people.
There's a few layers to this one. First off, I think it's a what could have been. People have wanted a spiritual successor to Black Flag forever, but to be fair, they want a pirate game. Like Black Flag, you could roll up to an island, Edward hops out of the ship, you can go find collectibles, you could do like a side mission, things like that. It doesn't even necessarily need to be Assassin's Creed. It could be, it doesn't have to be, but they want that. They don't want what Skull and Bones was when people were asking Ubisoft for more of that. And Ubisoft rejected what people pitched to them. Now, fans can have bad ideas. I absolutely admit I've had bad ideas as someone who's a passionate fan before. But I think Skull and Bones and games, some of the games on this list, whether they're good or bad, it goes to show that executives and game developers can have bad ideas too. Anybody can have bad ideas. So like by rejecting what people wanted and making this game, sure, maybe it gets much better 50 hours in. That's fine. Most people aren't going to stick around to that point. And another thing I did want to add with this too, this has been a year of people rejecting Ubisoft. People are tired of Ubisoft because Ubisoft does not put enough effort into their games. There are talented people who work there. But you take a look back at games like Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations 3, 4, etc. It's not that they don't have, glitches. But you look back to that era and it's like, one, there was more variety from Ubisoft. They were willing to actually make other series. And two, they were willing to put more heart, soul, and time into their entries to actually work some of those problems out. Modern Ubisoft people have been rejecting. They've been, ditching Star Wars Outlaws or games like Skull and Bones. All of these games, even Assassin's Creed Shadows, it's been getting memed into the ground. People are very tired of Ubisoft telling them that, hey, our games are the best when they're not. And I think that Skull and Bones is also a casualty of Ubisoft constantly shoving their foot in their own mouth.
Absolutely. And you bring up Star Wars Outlaws, and that's not on the list, but it really you could absolutely make the argument for Star Wars Outlaws being here. It was a game that it came out, it did things there. Honestly, I would say for Star Wars Outlaws, they've probably been supporting Star Wars Outlaws long term more than they've been doing Skull and Bones in terms of like major updates and really kind of doubling and tripling down on that game to make sure, right, that they can make maybe the best possible version of it. All right, moving on to the next one. I don't think I think you told me before we recorded this you didn't play it, but Funko Fusion. This is I mean, maybe you could make the argument for any of these. Everybody's opinion is going to be different. This is probably the first bad game, like legitimately just bad game that's on the list. And they gave me a code, I guess just for transparency's sake, I can say that. Obviously, that hasn't stopped me from talking negatively. The game, I think the game was trying to do something. It's a poor ripoff of Lego. That's really what it is. I do think it has some good ideas. I think there is something there. Like seeing Scott Pilgrim in a game and doing it the Lego way where, you got cutscenes and they kind of like trim it down and condense the story. Like that is cool. And just kind of having those different franchises, Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, and things like Scott Pilgrim, that's cool. But ultimately, I mean, this game, in my opinion, is just flat out bad. I don't really, I mean, again, everybody's got different opinions, but that's pretty much all I got to say about that one.
Yeah, and for me, again, I didn't play it, so I don't want to talk too much on this one, but I will say this. I am someone who avidly collects Funko Pops, like not
Same.
every brand, but yeah, you do too. I have too many of them. But even for me, I looked at this and I was like, why is there a Funko video game? And maybe that's not fair, because you could say the same thing for Lego, but I think a lot of people, that was kind of their first reaction is like, why does this exist? I think the second reaction was, what is this? And I think the third reaction was the people who bought it, like you, didn't like it. So it's like, it's not just that it's a bad game. It's also a game where I think a lot of people looked at it, and in a year with all these other games, they were like, do I really need a Funko Pop video game? And I don't know, maybe that could work at some point. I know there's board games for Funkos. I know that their vinyls do well. They have brand deals with pretty much everybody. I've been buying Dragon Ball Funko Pops recently. They just announced new ones. It's not that the toys are... I think it's not like people reject the toys, even though there is a subset of people like that. I think it's just... this was such a random year to drop a game like this, especially with no build-up, nothing like that. It just kind of came out of nowhere.
Kind of shown off a little bit. Like you can sense the Lego inspiration, and then when it comes out, it's just, I don't know. They probably made the game in just like 2 or so years. Maybe a little inexperience in the company. I don't know if any of these games made me like furious at them, right? And honestly, I don't feel furious at Funko Fusion. It is what it is. It was a game that came out that I just don't think was very good. Here's a game people might get furious about: Concord. We probably both have talked about this on our channels as well. I mean, what can you say that hasn't already been said? Now I don't know actually about your background with Concord, Jay, so you'll have to tell it, but I did the early access or the beta or whatever, and remember the beta originally was just going to be for people that pre-ordered it. There were pre-order rumors that it was like in the hundreds, and I don't normally believe those anyway, but that probably was true. Honestly, for Concord, I wouldn't be surprised if like 200 people pre-ordered it in the entire world. So they opened it up to everybody. I did play it, and I didn't mind it at all. I mean, for the game, if the game was free, just to be a free game, just you play it whenever, it's not a bad game, I think, whatsoever. I think it's solid enough. I think, you got the different abilities and different characters, and now they're very ugly characters. I think just the art style is not, well, the art style is maybe fine, but just literally the characters themselves, they needed more there. But the combat's whatever. It's not great. It's not bad. It is what it is. This is, like you've said even earlier in the video, probably the prime example of people just saying, you've brought nothing new. There's nothing original about besides maybe the single player stuff or the story, right? It was supposed to be every week they were going to have like a new cutscene, which by the way is massively expensive, and I don't know how they actually, were planning on doing that, but that was the only thing that they had pitched that made it unique in any way. Everything else, this was trying to be like and this is more than, I think, Suicide Squad or any of these, even Foam Stars, right? There's really only one Splatoon, but for a game like Concord, you're going up against legitimately hundreds of other games that are like Concord, and most of them are better. And when you're going up against it with nothing new to do, and you're paying $40, right? So like you actually had to pay the price, obviously, when the game came out. And then, so, obviously we've told the story, and then game comes out, nobody plays it, then they shut it down, and, that whole saga. So I don't know if there's a bigger failure this entire year, especially with the rumors of like 200 million, which people have kind of backed up and said, yeah, it's probably around there, right? $200 million, and that's not including buying the studio, obviously all that stuff, shutting the studio down. It was a disaster, an absolute pure disaster.
This one has a lot of layers to it again, too. Just kind of rapid fire. One thing is that, this was kind of caught at the head of the culture war stuff, which I know that we probably don't want to get too far into. I will say this, though. I don't think it did itself any favors in that regard, like with, game developers going on Twitter and calling people who criticize the game talentless freaks
That
and things
too.
like that. So it's like the gamers who were tied into social media or who were aware of that side of it. Yes, that's not going to be probably 90% or more of the video game sphere is not aware of that stuff. They're not sitting around on Twitter, they're not sitting around checking news articles and stuff like that, or even watching videos like we put out. That doesn't mean those things are bad or it's bad to be invested. It's just a lot of people, they go to their factory job, they've worked 50, 60 hours a week, they're tired as can be. They want to sit down, play a game for 2 hours, and go to bed. So that's like a lot of the, people who consume video games, they're casually doing it. I do think, though, that with that, when you have that kind of face out there promoting your game, and I should say, really promoting, pushing people away from it, that's going to spread like wildfire even to the people who aren't tuned in. Then their friend who is tuned in is going to be like, oh, that's that game that jerk works on or something like that. So you already have bad publicity around the game from that. You have the fact it doesn't really bring much new to the table. I think you can look at the art designs and you can make your own criticisms of them about that culture war thing. But at the end of the day, it's just ugly. Like, I think that the characters' designs are not appealing. It's like Overwatch, but if every character was visually and aesthetically unappealing. You look
Yep.
at games like Overwatch and even a game totally different genre, League of Legends. One of the things that brings people back is the characters, the character designs. They're there for things like Diva, or they're there for things like Jinx. Those characters, they actually carry a lot of weight in a genre like this, or in genres like this, whether it be team shooters, MOBAs, online games, things like that, where you have all of these different characters, and it's supposed to be a character based game. That will carry a lot of weight. You'll have Diva mains who cosplay Diva. You'll have Mercy mains who cosplay Mercy or who make fan art or all this stuff, right? Like, look at Overwatch. Look at how much the community has kept that alive. Look at a game like League. Look at how much the community has kept that alive because of those characters. This game doesn't have that. So this game has what you said about every other game on this list that tries to mimic something, is that there's probably good people who worked on this too behind the scenes, who weren't calling gamers names, doing stuff like that, who did try really hard. But overall, it's like you come to the genre, you don't bring enough new, no one cares. And then on top of that, as a final thought with this one, something you pointed out that makes me mad every time I think about it, and it was a great point from you in one of your videos, was if this game cost even $150 million, like, let's just trim that down, how many smaller games could they have made at Sony that Sony could have funded like this that they didn't make? Things that they've thrown out like Resistance, Sly, Jack, all Sly Cooper. Oh, I already said Sly. I'm just really mad about Sly. All of these different things where it's like, how many of those games could you have made that you wouldn't have basically sunsetted and delisted already?
Yep. Yeah, it makes me furious when you think Astro probably cost 50, 60 cents. I mean, you could have easily made 3 to 4 games just for the price of Concord, and that's not counting buying them and the rights, and which people have estimated to be 100+ more million. You probably could have gotten 5 Astrobots for that, and it's I mean that's you would have actually made money from all of those, because those games do just sell well over time and they're smaller budget, and Astrobot kind of showed that to people even this year. So yeah, that makes me very, very mad, and hopefully they learn from this. That's kind of the point of all of these games, is please, for the love of God, learn from your mistakes. All right, next one is kind of almost a repeat, but to a lesser extent, right? XDefiant. So I made a video specifically on this a few days ago when at least we're recording this. Not much for me to say. I mean, I never played it, but I always thought the game looked solid. I don't think people ever said that it was terrible. I think general opinion was that it was fine. Again, it's just kind of a lesser scale Concord, right? Like it shut down, or it's shutting down, I guess, currently. Didn't work, failed, another Ubisoft problem of 2024, and just didn't make the impact it was trying to do, right? It was trying to compete with Call of Duty, and it's shutting down, so early into your cycle. Obviously, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I wish they'd take it off my trophy list at this point, but I did play XDefiant. I played, I wouldn't say quite a few hours. I played a handful of hours, probably 10. I probably put 10 hours into the game. And for me, it's something where I have liked online games like this, off and on for my whole life. I will always be like a single player first type gamer. You know, if you look at my shelf, I showed you the other day, a lot of my stuff is like single player focused. It's just what I
Yeah.
enjoy. But at the end of the day, X Defiant, again, it doesn't really bring anything new for the most part. It did have tight controls. I thought it did a good job. I was surprised that Ubisoft was killing it off already, just because Ubisoft used to have a lot of money. But again, I think maybe that's the key. They're used to. I think that with X Defiant, though, it's also something where not only did it not bring anything new, but the people who are into those Ubisoft properties just got annoyed. You know, it's like you don't care enough about Splinter Cell to make a game, but you can throw the property in here to try and milk it. You know, you don't care enough about Ghost Recon to make like a classic style game, but of course you can do Ghost Recon content in here, that kind of stuff. I think it garnered bad will with the community that did care about Ubisoft games as well, because it felt like, great, you know, you don't care about this thing I grew up with. Oh, but you're able to throw it in my face as a nostalgia trip to try and get me to do your battle pass. So it's like it comes off as the worst of Ubisoft greed to get both Skull and Bones and this kind of in the same year. It just comes off as this out of touch, like, we can take the worst elements of games we made before or of other games on the market and put it together into a mediocre game. Please buy it. We're Ubisoft. We know you will, you idiot. And I think people have really gotten mad about that attitude. You know, Ubisoft now, I think they're kind of getting seen as EA was, especially in the early 2000s or the early 2010s, where it was like people saw EA on a box or on a label and they would say, ugh. And I think Ubisoft is garnering that reputation for themselves. And I think that even though X Defiant is a fine game, I had fun with it for the hours I played it. It's nothing special. It very clearly wanted to milk you for money. It cared more about that than it cared about its game. It cared more about nostalgia trips and bringing up things from the past than Ubisoft cares about actually making games for it. And because of that, it comes off as the worst elements of Ubisoft, kind of personified in a Call of Duty clone.
To end it off, South Park Snow Day. This is another one. They gave me a code.
Ugh.
Yeah, this one hurt. I gotta say, this one honestly hurt. They gave me a code. I stuck up for this game, like leading straight through it. Up until I guess I couldn't speak anymore until the review. I really wanted to like this game. I defended it in terms of like changing the style and all that stuff. I was fine with it, and the game, they were smart. I mean, the game looked fine. It looked actually, I would say, it looked good in the limited kind of availability that they showed it off in. But it was very contained, and obviously it was for a reason. You know, playing the game, it's just bad. You know, it's not as funny, or there's not as many funny moments as past South Park games. It's incredibly short. I remember when I reviewed it, like it's trying to be, I think I said like it's trying to be a roguelike, that the game is actually a roguelike game because you're kind of going back in over and over. But like there's limits to, there's weird like roadblocks that they put in the game where if it's literally trying to be a roguelike, which I would define it as that, it's a bad roguelike. Like it's just bad. Just the way the mechanics work. So I don't know, highly repetitive, just not fun. I mean, I did play it by myself, so that's important, I guess, to note. You don't have to do that, but I mean, I don't know. I really, I just wanted the third game, you know, with Stick of Truth and Fractured Butthole, but maybe one day we'll get that.
Yeah, and you know, even if you wanted to do a different genre, there's plenty of genres. I mean, off the top of my head, you could even do something kind of Mario Kart themed. I know that the kart themed knockoffs with like Nickelodeon and all these other things, they usually don't work out. But you look at something like Sega with Sonic All Stars Racing, a lot of people thought it was fun. You know, so it's not that you can't take South Park, shove it into another genre, and make it work. It's more just like you have to put a lot of heart and soul into it. I think at the end of the day, you know, those games, Stick of Truth and The Fractured Butthole, those games are not necessarily perfect in every way. They got criticisms, you know, they got critiques, but you could tell that the people who worked on them cared so much, and people cared about the South Park lore, they cared about the world. There were so many, you know, deep cuts and different references and things like that, but there was also just a fun gameplay loop. And so it's like you can make all of these different references, you can try and shove your game into whatever genre you want, like you said. But this one is so surprising to me because I didn't expect. I just thought that after the disaster of, you know, the early South Park game, I believe the N64, that they had learned so much about how not to do games that they only brought back South Park games with the more RPG era because they knew that that would work, because they knew there was heart there. I was really surprised that this game came out. In general, I was surprised when it got announced, but I was especially surprised when it came out and it was just so poor.
It kind of kicked us off. I mean, it was one of the earlier games on this entire list. I mean, you had Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones, but South Park was there in the early days as well. So, well, hopefully this wasn't too negative for some people. But like I said, there'll be some more looking at the year positively type videos going forward. I want to thank Jay, as always, for stopping by. Again, great creator, great guy just in general. He does, again, all his channels and whatnot will be in the description if you guys want to check him out. And Jay, thank you for stopping by and kind of critiquing the year with me.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm just disappointed we didn't get to the list of negative qualities I made about you, but maybe next time we'll get to that. No,
Yeah,
I
we'll do that a
appreciate it. It's
different
always
day.
fun. It's always fun to make videos together, man, and I love being on each other's channels. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your friendship.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you all for watching as always, and we'll see you all on the next one.